Right, hello everyone, and welcome to Diesel Arsenal channel. And those of you who don't know, my name's Warren, and I'm on here tonight because I'm going to talk to you about the death of Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed. We're going to have a look and try and find out whether they were murdered or whether it was just a horrible accident, tragic accident. And so let's say hello to give a big hello to everyone in the chat. So we've got Arsenal Alex, Craig AFC 87, Joanne Smith, we've got Delboy Gunner TV, we've got Jez Collins, and we've got Zoe Thomas. Hi, Zoe. Jez Collins again, and Gavin is in the chat as well. So yeah, that's what we're gonna hopefully achieve. So let's get into it, and this is what we're going to talk about. So basically, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to make that a bit bigger. So what I'm going to talk about is Diana's birth and her early life, a brief history of the English monarchy, the monarchy's link to secret societies and Freemasonry, the British monarchy in crisis and the unveiling of Diana, Camilla Parker Bowles entering the scene, and how Charles's relatives and other relatives of other people he was involved with interfered. Was Diana used as a tool? Diana and Charles marry, and it has problems from the start. The marital problems getting worse. Diana and Charles divorce. The night of the death, what happened on the night of the death? Leaving the hotel, the crash, the inquests into the death and the official verdicts, and then the various conspiracy theories or stroke alternative theories, as I like to call them. I can't stand that word conspiracy theory because I just think it's offensive in my opinion. But anyway, so listen guys, mate, I want to just give a massive vote of thanks to my mate Diesel for letting me do this on his channel. I'm massively grateful. I've got massive gratitude to him for letting me do this, and make sure you subscribe to his channel if you haven't already done so. Absolutely brilliant content, and the man is absolutely mad Arsenal supporter, really passionate, and he loves talking about all sorts of different things. That's why I'm on here tonight. And he talks about life, relationships, all sorts of different things. Films, TV, and he's put in a comment saying, love you too. Yeah, me too, Diesel. You're a top man. And please subscribe to my channel, Warren's Team Talk. You can search for me in the YouTube just by putting that in. I'm on Instagram as well. And I'm also on Twitter, but I don't really use Twitter that much. I prefer Instagram and YouTube. There is also a Facebook page and a Reddit page, I think it is, but I'm not really sure how to use those two. But anyway, so yeah, please make sure you do that. Make sure you put a like on the video for Diesel as well, please. And make sure you try and share it around because I think it's going to be a good one tonight. Anyway, so let's get into it. We're going to talk first of all about the early life of Diana. She was born on the 1st of July 1961 in Sandringham in Norfolk, and she was born to English nobility into the Spencer family, who had very close links to the English royal family. Park House, which was Diana's childhood home, was owned by Queen Elizabeth II and was leased by Diana's family from her. Now, during Diana's early childhood, she often played with Prince Andrew and Prince Edward when the royal family holidayed at Sandringham House, which was the neighbouring estate to Diana's home, Park House. And here you could see a map of where Sandringham is in Norfolk. And in 1979, Diana's mother bought her an apartment in Earl's Court in London for her 18th birthday, and she lived there with friends until 1981. Now, Diana first met the then Prince of Wales when she was age 16, and he was 29 in November 1977. And at the time, he was dating her older sister, Sarah. And then 3 years later, Charles and Diana were both guests at a countryside retreat during the summer of 1980. And after their relationship progressed, and eventually Diana was invited to the royal family's residence in Scotland at Balmoral Castle to meet his family. And it is alleged she made a very positive impression on Queen Elizabeth, the Duke of Edinburgh, and the Queen Mother. Hold on, what did happen there? Just give me 2 seconds, people. My notes have gone a bit haywire. There's never a show with Warren without something going a bit skew with. That's just the way it is, unfortunately. Anyway, so let's get back to where I was. Right, okay. So Windsor Castle, right? Windsor Castle. Finally, on the 6th of February 1981 at Windsor Castle, the then Prince of Wales proposed to Diana and she accepted. And what we're going to do now is we're going to have a brief look at the history of the English monarchy. At this point, I'd like to talk about the royal family down the ages because I think it's hugely relevant to the story. Okay. Now, I just want to say, if at any point I upset anyone tonight by anything I'm going to say, because I think I'm going to get very controversial and I may upset a few people, please don't get angry at Diesel. All right. He's been kind enough to let me come on here and do this. So please don't have a go at him. If you want to have a go at someone, have a go at me. All right. I don't mind. I'm not going to get upset. So, yeah, please don't take it out on Diesel. Don't start saying things to him, please. Like, what are you doing letting this clown come on your channel and talk all this nonsense? All right. It might well be nonsense, but it's just what I found was like looking into this subject for a long, long time. And yeah, and some of the views might be quite controversial because it is a very emotive subject, especially when you're talking about people like dying and stuff like that. But anyway, so the English monarchy dates back to at least the 9th century after the Viking raids and settlements and after numerous wars and territory disputes all over England, as well as the conquest of England in 1066 by William the Conqueror, also known as the Duke of Normandy. The Viking raids, the monarch of England had ultimate power and control for centuries. However, there was a period when England was a republic, when it was under the rule of Oliver Cromwell. And it wasn't long after this that the monarchy started to lose a lot of its powers to the British Parliament. However, it still retains a lot of power, and the monarch still remains the UK's head of state, although the monarchy never really uses its power. The monarch has down the centuries overseen countless invasions of other countries, and by the time of Queen Victoria, Britain had an empire which covered 3/4 of the planet's surface, which incidentally was the biggest empire that the world has ever seen. So we're going to talk now about Queen Victoria and the British Empire. So These invasions that took place led to the theft of many countries' treasures, some of which it still holds, slavery and subjugation of the invaded country's citizens. Britain was able to maintain its rule in these countries by using, in many of the places, a policy of divide and conquer. For example, in Ireland, and particularly in the north of Ireland, where the Protestant community is fiercely patriotic and loyal to the British monarchy, and the Catholic community, which would like to see a united Ireland and the 6 counties of the north of Ireland reunite with the Republic of Ireland. And it's a known fact that it's easier to maintain control and impose your will on a country if its inhabitants are constantly at war with each other. So it's clear to see that the monarch was answerable to no one, and anyone who dared challenge the monarch's authority or become a problem for it was murdered or eliminated. It also is a fact that the UK citizens are known as subjects of the monarch and not citizens of the country, which for me in itself is quite alarming, and it's a clear indication of how the monarchy looks upon the people of this country, and particularly when the monarch of the UK is unelected and the UK claims to be a democracy. And down the centuries, England's monarch looked upon its citizens as pawns to be used as they saw fit in their Machiavellian plans and activities, as well as being disposable. Put quite simply, the monarchs of this country have had a long history of thinking that the citizens of this country exist to provide them with position, whereas, in my opinion, the monarch's position should exist to provide its country's citizens with security and freedom. Now, the British monarchy and secret societies / Freemasonry. It has also been claimed that the British monarchy is part of the Illuminati, which is a secret, shadowy organisation, which is made of several extremely powerful individuals and or groups, and who it is said its aim is to control world affairs by manipulating and masterminding events and planting agents in governments and corporations in order to gain political power and influence over the world, as well as establish a new world order. It is also well known that the monarchy has strong links to the Freemasons, who have around 5 million members around the world, and over 200,000 who live in England and Wales. And these links go back in the midst of time, and in fact, the Duke of Kent has been the Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of England for over 50 years. King George VI, who was the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Scotland between 1936 and 1937. Edward VII was also Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of England from 1874 to 1901. Freemasons believe in brotherhood and helping each other out in times of hardship. However, the organisation does not come without controversy, as it fosters the belief that society is not equal and the elite have access to opportunities and support which the rest of us do not. Because of the secrecy and elitism within lodges, there is a strong opposition to the movement in many, many countries. So let me just click on this. So we've got Joanne says, I had the same teacher as Diana. Well, there you go. So Joanne, I believe you hail from Norfolk, so I guess you probably know Sandringham. Delboy says, no way, Joe. Yeah, exactly. Danny Cook, hi, Warren. Interesting topic. This, like to hear your thoughts. Thank you, man. I hope you enjoy it. And And Joanne replies to Del Boy, yes, indeed, the truth. Lovely lady, her name was Mrs. Chamberlain. Steve RFC says, big up. Diesel stream was good. I'm sure it was. It always is. I'm going to watch it later because I was preparing for the show. Del Boy Gunner, that's cool. And Steve RFC says, I remember this about Princess Diana. It was so long ago. Yeah, it was. It was a long time ago, mate. So let's move on. The British monarchy in crisis and the unveiling of Diana. At this stage, it should be pointed out before Charles' relationship with Diana became public knowledge, the popularity of the British monarchy was declining, and there was a lot of debate, certainly in the UK, about how the monarchy would address this. I remember there were even calls in some sectors for Queen Elizabeth to abdicate and pass the throne on to Charles. When Diana came into public life, the British people loved her because of what they were able to see of her personality. She was good looking. She was seen as kind and down to earth and sensitive. And this popularity grew, particularly the work that she did with AIDS victims and landmines. And this time, in contrast, the royals were seen as cold, aloof, uncaring, and out of touch. And I have to say that I can't think of anyone at that time who had a bad word to say about her. And it's not hard to see why many people believe that she was brought into the royal family and allowed to marry Charles for the following three reasons. One, to boost the popularity of the royal family. Two, to produce good looking heirs to the throne. And three, to give the royal family a new lease of life and come across as less out of touch and detached. Now, Charles, as a young man, was advised by his great uncle, Lord Mountbatten, who told him, in a case like yours, the man should sow his wild oats and have as many affairs as he can before settling down. But for a wife, he should choose a suitable, attractive, and sweet character girl before she has met anyone else she might fall for. It is disturbing for women to have experiences if they have to remain on the pedestal after marriage. Now, I find this advice very interesting, but clearly Charles only partially followed it. And it's been widely reported that Camilla Shand, otherwise known as Parker Bowles, first met Prince Charles in mid-1971. So please, guys, make sure you subscribe to Diesel's channel, put a like on his channel. I'm hearing good reports about the stream he did earlier, so I can't wait to have a watch of that because that's going to be amazing. If it was as good as that one he did previous to that, it'll be absolutely banging. I've got no doubt about it, because the way this man can talk is just incredible. I just don't know how he does it. I wish I could do it, but I can't. There's no way on earth I would remember 1/10 of the stuff that I'm telling you. I've got it all here in the Word document that's next to the screen that I'm using to broadcast on Diesel's channel, and I'm having to read it off there because I just wouldn't remember it. I don't know if it's because of my age or what it is, but there you go. So yeah, please make sure you subscribe to him because he's a top man and he deserves all the subscriptions that he can get his hands on. And please make sure you put the thumbs up on the video, and make sure you try and spread it around as much as you can for him. Also, please subscribe to my channel, Warren's Team Talk. I did a stream there last night with Del Boy Gunner and Carl Walsh, and we were talking about Arsenal's transfer window and the upcoming season and the effect that the transfer window would have in the coming months. So yeah, that was quite an interesting debate. So yeah, make sure you come and check that out. And the three of us were like getting quite passionate, I have to say. So yeah, come check it out because it was real interesting, great show. Anyway, so Camilla Parker Bowles enters the scene and the case of the interfering relatives. It is widely believed that Charles and Camilla belong to the same social circles, and although they occasionally attended the same events, they hadn't actually met. It had been reported that Charles and Camilla had first met up at a polo match, but their first encounter was in fact at the home of a mutual friend, Lucia Santa Cruz, and it is alleged that she formally introduced them. They became close friends and then started a romantic relationship which was well known within their social circle. Their relationship became progressively more serious until it was put on hold after Charles joined the Royal Navy and he travelled overseas, and then shortly afterwards it ended abruptly. It is unclear as to what the reasons were for the relationship ending, but some of the reasons that have been put forward include Charles' great uncle, great uncle Lord Mountbatten, arranged for Charles to go overseas as a way for the relationship with Camilla to be ended, so it would clear a path for Charles and Lord Mountbatten's granddaughter Amanda Knatchbull to become engaged. It is also believed that Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, wanted Charles to marry one of the Spencer family granddaughters of her close friend, Lady Fermoy. Some believe that Camilla did not want to marry Charles, but she instead wanted to marry Andrew Parker Bowles. Others say it was because Charles did not want to marry until he was at least 30 years old. It is also believed that Charles and Camilla wanted to marry. It is also believed that had Charles and Camilla wanted to marry at that time, they would have not been granted permission to do so. And even though many felt that they would be a good match, why it is believed by those in positions of power they should not be permitted to marry is unclear. But for me, Charles' great uncle Lord Mountbatten's advice to Charles give a very strong indication as to why Camilla and Charles' relationship didn't work at this stage. And it is a fact that the British monarchy had a long history of not favouring individuals from the Catholic religion, particularly after King Henry VIII came to the throne. And if you remember, Lord Mountbatten is alleged to have said to Charles, in a case like yours, you should sow your wild oats and have as many affairs as you can before settling down. But for a wife, you should choose a suitable, attractive and sweet character girl before she's met anyone that she might fall for. And it is disturbing for women to have experiences if they have to remain on a pedestal after marriage. So we move on. And the next question is, was Diana used as a tool? I would hazard a guess that for many people, Diana would definitely meet the profile that Lord Mountbatten had given Charles as a woman who was a suitable wife. He should choose a suitable, attractive and sweet character girl before she has met anyone else that she might fall for. And it's disturbing for women to have experiences if they had to remain on the pedestal after marriage. I personally believe that Diana Spencer was selected as good wife material for the following reasons. She would help the royal family to boost their popularity because at the time it was failing. She met the profile deemed as appropriate wife material by the senior royals, and it was also believed she would produce a good-looking offspring. So it has been claimed that Charles had a long-standing relation with Camilla Parker Bowles, which continued during all this time, and that Camilla was always the woman that Charles really loved. And I do find it very odd that Charles would pursue Diana, but continue his relationship with Camilla all the time during his and Diana's courtship, and even after he and Diana married. So the question that I would have is, well, why not just marry Camilla in the first place? But you know, I'm not very sensitive to the inner workings of the royal family. I'm not. I'm sorry, but I don't believe that Charles ever loved Diana. But that was, in my opinion, never the purpose or the basis of their relationship from Charles' perspective. And it is important to note that even after Camilla and Charles' relationship ended, that they remained close friends. And after Lord Mountbatten was assassinated by the Provisional IRA in August 1979, Charles was grief-stricken, and he seemingly relied heavily on Camilla for support at that time. And rumours began circulating in their social circle that Charles and Camilla had restarted their intimate relationship. So it's clear that Charles and Camilla's intimate relationship rekindled from 1979, and it never extinguished from that point on. This whole saga with Charles and Diana, for me, fits in with what I said earlier about the royals seeing us as disposable tools for them to use in whatever way they see fit. And it has been the case, in my opinion, since the dawn of the monarchy. And it should also be remembered that the monarchy and all the landowners of this country could get those living on their lands to do anything they wanted. And if they refused, they would be kicked off the land, raped or murdered, or a combination of all three. So we move on. So Diana and Charles marry. Before we do that, I'm just going to get some more of these chats up. Joanne says she went to Sandringham to see the Queen's flowers. Fair play to you, Joanne. I'm sure they were absolutely beautiful. Gavin says, for cover up, Charles is a pedo. Okay, mate, fair enough. And Nick Score 74 says the establishment had Princess Diana bumped off. Mate, you're not going to get an argument out of me about that, but we'll see. We'll see. You'll see what I think at the end. Joanne says the royal family were always poking their noses in relationships. They were. And Taib says, hi, Ron. Hi, Taib. Nice to see you, mate. I hope you're well, buddy. So Diana and Charles marry, and it has problems from the start. Now, on the 29th of July 1981, Charles and Diana were married in London at St. Paul's Cathedral. And Diana has been reported as saying that from the beginning, there were three people in the relationship. Diana struggled with her relationship with Charles from the start. And during her first pregnancy, when she was carrying Prince William, there was an instant where she fell down the staircase. And what happened was that in January 1982, 12 weeks into the pregnancy, Diana fell down the staircase at Sandringham, and she suffered some bruising, and the royal gynecologist, Sir George Pinker, was summoned from London. Thankfully, the fetus was uninjured. Diana later confessed that she had intentionally thrown herself down the stairs because she was feeling so inadequate, which for me is unsurprising given that she was in a loveless marriage and that her husband's affections were clearly reserved for another woman from before she had met Charles. Now, after Diana and Charles were married, it is known that Diana confronted Camilla about her affair with Charles, and apparently Camilla said very little in the conversation, but she stood her ground and responded by saying, look, you have got everything you wanted. You've got all the men in the world falling in love with you, and you've got two beautiful children, and what more do you want? And it's alleged that these words stayed with Diana forever. But then Diana responded to Camilla by saying, "What I want is I want my husband." Fair play to her as well for like having a pop at her, because yeah, that's the marital problems get worse. In 1986, which was 5 years into her marriage, it's alleged that Diana started her relationship with James Hewitt, and many people believe that James Hewitt is Prince Harry's father. However, the problem with this theory is that Harry was born 2 years earlier in 1984, unless, of course, Diana and James Hewitt relationship started earlier than it has publicly been stated. It's also alleged that during 1986, Charles reignited his relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles. However, I very much doubt that the relationship ever ended. I honestly don't think it had. I don't. And as time went by, Charles and Diana's relationship worsened. And by 1987, the media had dubbed them the Glums because they looked so uncomfortable in each other's company. I mean, look at that picture there. One's looking down and fiddling with his fingers, and the other one's looking up into the sky, looking like completely bored. So this led to a meeting which was hosted by the Queen and Prince Philip, which was aimed at getting the couple to reconcile their differences. However, this meeting was unsuccessful. After this, there were a number of highly publicized leaks of details of the couple's affairs, which included the infamous Squidgy Gate, which referred to telephone conversations between Diana and James Gilby, which were published in the Sun newspaper, and the Camilla Gate tapes, which contained details of intimate conversations between Charles and Camilla, which were published in the tabloid media. And then finally, in December 1992, the inevitable happened when Prime Minister John Major announced the couple's amicable separation to the House of Commons. In 1993, Diana claimed in a letter to her butler, Paul Burrell, that she believed that her husband was planning to have her killed, so that the path could be cleared for Charles to marry his personal assistant, Tiggy Leg Bourke. It's alleged that in October 1995, Diana requested a private meeting with her personal legal advisor, Victor Mishcon, to tell him about something that was on her mind. And during the course of the meeting that was held between the two of them, she claimed that people who she believed were reliable sources had told her that it was possible that a car accident might be organised in which she would either be killed or seriously injured. So let's move on. And we move on to Charles and Diana's divorce. Finally, after advice from the Queen, numerous television interviews, and a number of allegations and counter-allegations and disagreements within the royal family, the couple were divorced in August 1996. Now, throughout her life, she was a big supporter of numerous causes and charities, including AIDS, HIV, and landmines, which endeared her to the public. And initially, I'm sure this would have pleased the royal family because it would have helped boosted their flagging popularity. But as Charles and Diana's relationship started to unravel, I'm sure her popularity would have irritated them. So we move on to the night of Diana's death. In 1997, Diana started a relationship with Dodi Fayed, the son of Mohammed Al Fayed, and on the 30th of August 1997, Diana and Dodi Fayed arrived in Paris, and the plan was for them to stay the night in Paris en route to London after spending the previous 9 days together on board Mohammed Al Fayed's yacht Jonical. It's believed Henry Paul, the deputy head of security at Hotel Ritz Paris, was instructed to drive a hired black 1994 armored Mercedes-Benz S280 sedan S-Class to take them to Mohammed Al Fayed's Paris estate or go to Dodi Al Fayed's private apartment in Rue Arsène Hussier. And it is believed that the reason that the Mercedes was hired was to avoid the paparazzi, as a decoy car was used which left from the main entrance, which attracted a large group of photographers. So, yep, come on, guys, make sure you subscribe to Diesel's channel. Make sure you please make sure you put a like on this video for him. That would be absolutely fantastic. It's really, really important for YouTubers to get people to put likes on their videos because it helps with the algorithm and the video getting pushed out around YouTube. That's the way that YouTube do their business. So please make sure you do that for him. He's got brilliant content, and any of you that haven't subscribed to him already, you're missing out. You really are, especially if you're Arsenal fans and you like stuff like we're talking about tonight, or you like listening to people talking about television and films and real life dramas, or like he did one, what was it? He talks about life in general and about things like Love Island and all this sort of carry on. So yeah, come and check him out. He's absolutely superb. Joanne says they should have let him marry Camilla in the first place. Too much of the Queen Mum and Lady Fermoy poking their noses in with Charles and finding him a suitable partner. I can't disagree with Joanne. I really can't. And Joanne says hi to Taib. Joanne says Harry gets that from Henry VIII, the ginger hair. And oh yes, Joanne says also the convoy with the Trumps about the tampon. I don't know what you're going on about, Joanne. Sorry. Gavin says he gets that from his dad, the tennis player. Joanne, yes, exactly. Right. Okay, so make sure as well you subscribe to my channel, Warren's Team Talk. You can find me on YouTube, and you can find me on Instagram, and also you can find me on Twitter. I do lots of videos about Arsenal, about football in general, and then I come on this channel to talk about the paranormal as well. So if that floats your boat, then come and check me out. So yeah, and I every Saturday at 2:30 I do like a Sky Sports Soccer Saturday show where I keep you up to date with what's going on in the 3:00 kickoffs up and down the whole of the United Kingdom. So make sure you come and check that out. It's always a good laugh, plenty of banter, and yeah, it's very, very interesting and exciting as well. There's always plenty of drama. Okay, so let's move on. So Diana and Dodi Fayed leave the hotel. So then Diana and Dodi Fayed departed from the rear entrance of the Hotel Ritz in Paris, which was owned by Mohammed Al Fayed at around 20 past midnight in the hired Mercedes, in which Diana and Dodi were rear passengers, and bodyguard Trevor Rees-Jones was sat in the front passenger seat. And it is alleged that none of the occupants were wearing seatbelts. Now, then, hold on. then, okay. So the journey from the hotel to the crash site. So you can see that picture there gives a good description about their journey and what happened along the way. After leaving the hotel, they crossed the Place de la Concorde and then drove along Cours la Reine and Cours Albert. The first, the embankment road along the right bank of the River Seine and also into the Place de la Armée underpass. Witnesses have claimed that as the car entered the tunnel, it had been swarmed by photographers on motorcycles. And then if we move on, right, the actual crash itself, it has been reported that at 23 minutes past midnight, Henry Paul lost control of the car as it entered the underpass, and it is alleged that the car struck a passing white Fiat and swerved to the left of the two-lane carriageway and collided head-on with the 13th pillar that supported the roof. It's been estimated that the car was travelling at a speed of 105 kilometres an hour, 65 miles per hour, which incidentally is more than twice the tunnel's speed limit, which was 50 kilometres an hour, 31 miles per hour. The car then spun around and hit the stone wall of the tunnel backwards and finally came to a stop. The front of the car was in particular suffered substantial damage, and some witnesses arrived shortly after the crash had happened reported seeing smoke. So it is claimed by eyewitness accounts, a white Fiat Uno was seen exiting the tunnel and the driver of the Fiat was never ever found. The vehicle was not identified, but Diana's party's car had traces of the impact on its body. So the La Alma underpass, unfortunately, there was no CCTV footage of the journey taken by the car and that Diana's party had travelled in, despite the fact that there were 14 CCTV cameras in the underpass. Now, I find this really odd, and it has also been claimed in a report written by Lieutenant Eric Augier of the Brigade Criminelle that none of these cameras had any footage and or images relating to the crash, and they were mostly security cameras facing the entrances to the buildings, and that most of these cameras were not maintained or operated by the city of Paris, but rather by the owners of the properties that they were attached to, and they were maintained and operated privately. To me, this comment is bizarre in the extreme, but I'll come back to that later. It is claimed that the photographers had been driving slower than the car that Diana's party travelled in, and there was some distance behind them. However, this directly contradicts the testimony of several eyewitnesses who, as I've already mentioned, that as the car entered the underpass, it had been swarmed by photographers on motorcycles. It is then claimed that when they reached the site of the accident, some of them made attempts to rescue the occupants of the car, while others just took photographs. According to eyewitness reports, around 10 minutes after the crash, the police arrived on the scene, and then 5 minutes later, the ambulance arrived, as well as firefighters. The police immediately arrested 5 of the photographers. 2 were detained later, and the police took around 20 rolls of film off the photographers and impounded their vehicles. So, the victims of the crash. So, Trevor Rees-Jones suffered multiple serious facial injuries and a head confusion, but he was still conscious. Thankfully, he survived the crash, but he suffered a serious head injury, and he does not recall any details from the crash, but he's claimed that he was not wearing a seatbelt. Diana, who was in the back of the car, was critically injured and suffered fractures to her ribs, her arm, and her right collarbone, and was dislocated. She also suffered from swelling and bruising to the brain, but she was still conscious. It seems that it was mostly the right-hand side of her body that had been affected by the crash, which seems to indicate that she was sat sideways in her seat when the accident happened. Diana was taken to Piété-Salpêtrière Hospital, and she arrived there at 2 in the morning, and her injuries were extensive, and sadly she died at 3 a.m. Dodi Al-Fayed was sat next to Diana in the back of the car and was pronounced dead at the scene shortly afterwards. Henry Paul was also pronounced dead at the scene of the accident. Both Henry Paul and Dodi Al-Fayed were taken to the Paris mortuary. It is also claimed that later that none of the occupants of the car were wearing seatbelts. It was later reported as well that Henry Paul had a blood alcohol level of 1.7 grams per litre of blood, which is about 3.5 times the legal limit in France and currently over twice the legal limit in England. So the official verdicts. A French judicial investigation took place and it produced a 6,000 plus page report, which was never published, but it's alleged that it found Diana died as a result of the car crash, and it concluded that the paparazzi were some distance from Diana's party's car when it crashed, and they were not responsible. On the 6th of January 2004, an inquest into the crash opened in London, which was held by the coroner of the Queen's household as part of the inquest. The coroner asked the Metropolitan Police Commissioner to make inquiries to the allegations circulating that the deaths were not an accident. And forensic scientist Angela Gollop was commissioned to examine the forensic evidence. The police reported its findings in December 2006 in Operation Paget. And anyone who's interested, I've got a copy of the report here. So if you want to see it, just email me. The email address you need to write to is Warren's Team Talk at outlook.com. So that's Warren's Team Talk at outlook.com, and I'll send you a copy of it. In January 2006, in a TV interview, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner explained that the case was far more complex than at first thought. And on the 29th of January 2006, it was claimed by the Sunday Times that the British Secret Service were in Paris at the time of Diana's death, and as a consequence, they were cross-examined as part of the inquest. On the 8th of January 2007, inquest opened into the deaths of Diana and Dodi Al-Fayed. It was originally decided that these inquests would sit without a jury, but this decision was later overturned by the High Court of Justice, and the original deputy coroner for the Queen's household for the Diana inquest and assistant deputy coroner for Surrey in relation to the Fayed inquest then stood down on the 24th of April 2007, saying they lacked the experience required to deal with an inquest with a jury. The role of coroner for the inquest was then taken up by a new coroner on the 13th of June. On the 27th of July, the coroner issued a list of issues which would likely be raised at the inquest, and many of these have been covered by Operation Paget in their report. These issues were as follows. So they're all there on the screen. Whether or not driver error on the part of Henry Paul caused or contributed to the cause of the collision, whether Henry Paul's ability to drive was impaired through drink or drugs, whether a Fiat Uno or any other vehicle caused or contributed to the collision, whether the actions of the paparazzi caused or contributed to the cause of the collision, whether the road, tunnel layout and construction were inherently dangerous, and if so, whether this contributed to the collision, whether any bright stroke flashing lights contributed to or caused the collision, and if so, their source, whose decision it was that Diana and Dodi Al-Fayed should leave from the rear entrance to the Ritz, and that Henry Poole should drive the vehicle. Henry Poole's movements between 7 and 10 p.m. on the 30th of August 1997. The explanation for the money in Henry Poole's possession on the 30th of August 1997 and in his bank account, whether Anderson, a photographer who followed the princess and a week before her death, was in Paris on the night of the collision, and whether Diana's life would have been saved if she had reached hospital sooner, or if the medical treatment had been different, whether Diana was pregnant, whether Diana and Dodi Al-Fayed were about to announce their engagement, whether, and if so, in what circumstances, the Princess of Wales feared for her life, the circumstances relating to the purchase of the ring, the circumstances in which Diana's body was embalmed, whether the evidence of Tomlinson throws any light on the collision, whether the British or any other security services had any involvement in the collision, whether there was anything sinister about the Sherrilai burglary or the disturbance at the Big Pictures Agency, whether correspondence belonging to Diana, including some from Prince Philip, had disappeared, and if so, the circumstances involved with that. The jury decided on the 7th of April 2008 that Diana had been unlawfully killed by the grossly negligent driving of the following vehicles: the paparazzi and of the Mercedes driver Henry Poole. The jury also stated that the victim's death and injuries were caused or at least contributed to by the fact that they were not wearing seatbelts, and that the car they were travelling in crashed into a pillar in the Alma Tunnel rather than colliding with something else. The cost of the inquiry, the coroner's inquest, and the Metropolitan Police investigation came to in the region of £25 million, and they lasted 6 months and heard testimony from over 250 witnesses. After the findings of the inquiry, coroner's inquest and police investigation were released. Prince William and Harry released a statement in which they declared their gratitude and that they agreed with the findings. And Mohammed Al-Fayed stated that he would accept the findings and abandon his campaign to prove that his son and Diana were murdered. Right, so there you go. So that's what some of the things that they looked at and what happened. So what we're going to do now, we're going to look at some of the alternative theories or conspiracy theories, as a lot of people like to call them. And before we do that, I just want to remind you all, if you haven't done it already, to go and, subscribe to Diesel's channel. Diesel's been very kind to let me do this for you lot tonight. And please make sure you put a like on his video, and please make sure you subscribe to his channel. The fella is an absolute legend, in my opinion. I love the way that he talks and how he does it. He has no script, not like me. I'm sitting here and I'm reading all of this to you off my notes because I can't do it any other way. I would not be able to remember all of this. So yeah, make sure that you go and subscribe to his channel, because this guy, I'm telling you, he could talk for England at any hesitation, and he'd go and win the gold medal. Absolutely no doubt about it. So yeah, please make sure you go and subscribe to his channel. Also, make sure you come and subscribe to my channel, Warren's Team Talk. You can find me on YouTube and also on Twitter and Instagram. And for those of you who like mugs, handcrafted mugs, go and check out Jez Collins on Instagram, because he can make handcrafted mugs with his YouTube channel logo on it, Arsenal history and more. £12 plus postage and packing, absolute bargain in my opinion. And also on my channel, you can see me on a Saturday doing a show that kicks off at 2:30, and it covers all of the action up and down the country in the 3 o'clock kickoffs in the football. And yes, a great show, and it's always lots of banter and lots of fun and frivolities around the football matches. It's great. It's like an alternative to Sky Sports Soccer Saturday. Now, I've also started doing some watch-alongs for the Rugby Union Six Nations as well, which is another big passion of mine. So make sure you come and check that out. I think the next one I'm doing is the Scotland-France game on the Sunday. I always only ever do it on the Sunday because of my Saturday show. But yeah, come and check that out as well. So here we go. So the subjects that we're going to cover in the alternative theories are blood samples, seat belts, Diners 2 predictions about dying in a car crash, no CCTV, the white Fiat, a bright flash, money in Henry Paul's bank account, security service connection / MI6 involvement, Diana pregnant with Dodie's child, transport to hospital, the embalming of the body, and the SAS involvement. So that's the things we're going to be looking at. I'm sure there's more, but that's the ones we're going to look at. So the list of theories. And the first one is the blood samples for Henry Paul. There was allegations regarding the sobriety of Henry Paul at the time of the crash that killed Diana and Dodi Fayed. The French investigators concluded that Henry Paul was drunk, and it is alleged that they came to this conclusion because the analysis of blood samples, which showed that the alcohol level in Henry Paul's blood was 3 times the French legal limit, and it was alleged that Paul had been taking antidepressants. At the British inquest in 2008, Lord Stevens said that the available evidence suggested that Paul had consumed only 2 alcoholic drinks, but this was not necessarily all that Paul had consumed. Well, had he had 2 drinks, or had he not? Make your mind up, mate. And that he was indeed under the influence of alcohol at the time of the crash. This is the sort of thing that makes me really suspicious about these inquests. This absolute nonsense. And anyway, it's also been claimed that the DNA samples confirmed that the blood samples with high alcohol levels were from Henry Paul, and it was claimed that this was proven by making a comparison with samples provided by Paul's parents. There were also allegedly 2 tests taken by an independent analytical laboratories within France, which showed Henry Paul had 12.8% carbon monoxide hemoglobin saturation, which occurs when blood's iron carrying pigment hemoglobin is bound with carbon monoxide instead of oxygen. Smokers normally have about 10% of hemoglobin bound with carbon monoxide, so the results in Paul's case were not unusual. However, another test showed that Paul had a carbon monoxide hemoglobin saturation of 20.7% at the time of his death. And that result, if accurate, means that it's likely that Henry Paul's bloodstream would have had 40% saturation a few hours earlier. And if this is true, then it would scarcely have been able to function at all. It is also interesting to note that just 72 hours before the tragic crash, which claimed the lives of 3 people, Henry Paul had been given a clean bill of health and had been awarded a pilot's license, which was issued by the French equivalent of the Civil Aviation Authority, and this had to be signed by a registered doctor. So let's have a quick look and see what's going on in the chat. And Joanne says, Prince Charles always brings his own toilet seat with him on his travels. Laugh out loud. I didn't know that. I don't know, Joanne. I really don't. And Gavin says, did Camilla own a Uno? Who knows, mate? Probably. And Joanne says that was destroyed, that Fiat. It probably was, mate. Funny that no CCTV suspect. Funny that no CCTV suspect already. Yes. Gavin says that has to be built. That has to be bull. No CCTV at all working. Never gonna happen. Well, yeah, I just find it odd that they're claiming that the CCTV was only that was in the tunnel was for the properties that were lining along the road, yet this tunnel was under the ground and you couldn't see the properties. So what's going on? It's this stuff like this madness that makes me really doubt anything these people say. Joanne says he's been hushed up. The bodyguard is more than his life is worth to say anything. Probably right, mate. Joanne says, Gavin, it's bloody it's the bloody coronation, Lex. Laugh out loud. When's that? It's the same day that Arsenal are playing Newcastle up at St James's Park. Whenever that is, I don't know, but it's that date. And Joanne says embalming fluid will stop any trace of pregnancy showing. There you go. There you go. Anyway, so Henry's certificate of physical and mental aptitude signed by a registered doctor on the 28th of August 1997. It should also be noted that he was a pilot for 20 years, Henry Paul, and every year he had to pass a stringent medical, including blood and liver tests. If these claims were made about Henry Paul's, if these claims that were made about Henry Paul's blood, which seemingly backed the official findings / inquiries, were true, as a person who has worked with people who were struggling with substance misuse issues, it's me, I've done that work, to suggest that someone with that level of alcohol in their bloodstream will be able to mask it, I find extremely difficult to believe. And I also have to question if the allegations about the level of alcohol in Paul's bloodstream were true. As for me, I would have serious doubt about his ability to appear as sober as he was in the CCTV footage showing Diana and the rest of the party that travelled in the car that evening, that they were widely seen and circulated at the time. As well as that, I find it difficult to believe that Diana, Dodi Fayed, and Trevor Rees-Jones would have been happy to travel in a car that was driven by someone who was as intoxicated as Henry Poole, or by someone who is claimed was intoxicated as Henry Poole was. So this leads me to question the veracity of the information that was used to make the assessments, which were were in the official British and French inquests. So also the fact that just 72 hours before he'd gone through such a stringent and thorough medical examination, which he had passed without any issues or concerns raised about his health, tells me that the suggestion that Henry Poole was an alcoholic depressive, which the inquests that were held into this accident seemed to base their findings on, is highly insulting and smacks of a huge cover-up. So seatbelts. So let's have a look at the seatbelts. So the seatbelts, were seatbelts worn? The other issue that makes me question the attempt to blame the crash and deaths of those who died in the crash on Henry Poole's sobriety is the accusation that Diana in particular was not wearing her seatbelt. At the time in the UK, there was a lot of debate about whether or not she had been wearing a seatbelt, and a number of people who were close to Diana went on record as saying that she never traveled without wearing a seatbelt, and in fact that she was a devout seatbelt user. One such person was Lady Sarah McCorquodale, who was quoted as saying that Diana was religious in putting her seatbelt on. Another issue that makes me question the veracity of the claim that she was not wearing her seatbelt at the time of the crash was the allegations made about Henry Poole's sobriety, as I very much doubt she would have not worn her seatbelt knowing the state that Poole was in. And I also doubt very strongly she would have wanted to travel in the car in the first place if the allegations about his sobriety were true, which is another reason I doubt the claims made about the blood samples. Also, in relation to the seatbelt issue, it was claimed that the report made by Operation Paget that all the seatbelts in the car were working fine, except the one that Diana used in 2005. The French investigation found the seatbelts were declared as working fine in October 1997, which suggests that the damage to Diana's seatbelt took place after the crash. So there's a few more chats here, and let's quickly go through those. Joanne says 6th of May. Yep, that's it. Excellent show, this one. Always thought this was a dodgy one. The fact that she was maybe going to marry an Arab. Yeah, exactly, mate. Exactly. There's so much weird stuff, mad suggestions like that have been used to say that it was an accident. I just don't buy it. I don't. And you know, when you actually read the stuff that they've said, it's just absolute madness. How they expected to get away with it, I really don't know. So let's move on. Let's talk about these people, the paparazzi. As we have already seen, the jury sat in the UK inquest decided on the 7th of April 2008 that Diana had been unlawfully killed by the grossly negligent driving of the following vehicles: the paparazzi and of the Mercedes driver, Henry Poole, which directly contradicts the findings of the French inquest, which stated that the paparazzi was some distance from Diana's party's car when it crashed and they were not responsible. The jury in the UK inquest also stated that the victims' deaths and injuries were caused or at least contributed to by the fact they were not wearing seatbelts, and that the car they were travelling in crashed into a pillar in the Alma Tunnel rather than colliding with something else. So it's clear to me that there are very serious and glaring discrepancies between the findings of the UK and French inquest, which gives me serious doubts about how reliable the findings of the French and the UK inquest were, and how independent they were from interference from parties who had an interest in the findings of the inquest following a particular narrative. So, next up is we're going to talk about Diana's fears about being murdered by the royals. So, on at least 2 separate occasions, Diana raised concerns about her safety and fears that she would be killed in a car accident, which is another reason that I doubt she would have been happy to travel in a car without using a seatbelt. So, on the first occasion, I'm going to put that actually. See if I can do that. Can I? I don't think I can. No, I can't, unfortunately. Never mind. Anyway, so on the first occasion when she predicted that she would be murdered, let me just put this to full screen a minute. I want to make sure. Yeah, no, I'm not going to be able to do it. I wanted to see if I could. No, I can't. So the first occasion when she predicted that she would be murdered came in 1993, when Diana claimed in a letter to her butler, Paul Burrell, that she believed that her husband was planning to have her killed so that the path would be cleared for Charles to marry his personal assistant, Tiggy Legge Bourke. The next occasion that she predicted that she would be murdered came in October 1995, when Diana requested a private meeting with her personal legal advisor, Victor Michon, to tell him about something that was on her mind. And during the course of the meeting that was held between the two of them, she claimed that people who believed that she believed were reliable sources had told her that it was possible that a car accident might be organised in which she would be either killed or seriously injured. And I was going to read that letter out to you, but I can't. It's too small for me. My eyes are terrible, unfortunately. So, the absence of CCTV. As I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, there was no CCTV footage of the journey taken by the car that Diana's party travelled in, despite the fact there were 14 CCTV cameras in the Point La Alma underpass, which I find extremely odd. And it has also been claimed in a report written by Lieutenant Eric Gigal of the Brigade Criminelle that none of these cameras had any footage and or images relating to the crash, and they were mostly security cameras facing the entrances to the buildings, and that most of these cameras were not maintained or operated by the city of Paris, but rather they were maintained and operated privately by the owners of the properties they were attached to. So what they're trying to say is that the CCTV cameras were facing private properties, and that they weren't facing into the road, and that were there for the security of those properties and weren't there to monitor what was going on the road. Yet these cameras are allegedly under the ground in this underpass, which you can't see the properties from the underpass because it's under the ground. So this again is another glaring, absolute madness of a comment, because it just does not make any sense. So what I find bizarre about this is the fact that the Point La Alma underpass went underground, and the Independent newspaper in 2006 stated there were 14 CCTV cameras in the underpass, but none of these cameras recorded any footage of the crash, as they were primarily security cameras which were allegedly facing the entrances to buildings. What I would like to know is if these cameras were located in the underpass, which is clearly under the ground, how is it possible that they can be facing buildings which are only visible above ground? Another interesting point is that I find it extremely convenient that this accident happened in the underpass where there are no cameras, and it is easy for it to be passed off as a horrible, unfortunate accident. So let's move on. So everyone, don't forget Diesel. Make sure you subscribe to his channel. I know he's done another banger of a video tonight. I haven't seen it yet, but I'll be watching it later. Make sure you go and subscribe to his channel, put a like on his videos. He's an absolute top man. He's a really great mate, and I love him to bits. I really do. And his shows are amazing. The way that he talks and talks and talks. He don't use no script, not like me. I have to, because I can't remember what I'm going to say otherwise. It's probably because of my age, I suppose. I've got to accept it because I'm getting on a bit now. But anyway, so yeah, and he does all sorts of stuff. He does reactions to Arsenal matches. He talks about our issues to do with Arsenal Football Club. He lets me come on here and do this for him. I do streams about the paranormal. Hoping to do another one in a couple of weeks. I sort of know which one it's going to be, but there will be one. I'm not going to say anything about it yet, but there will be one similar to this one about the Jill Dando. But that I'm not sure when I'm going to do that. I'm not sure that I'm going to do that one next, but there's going to be another one that it really is unbelievable. This one, like, you'll think I've gone off my head. If it's the one, if I do it, then you'll think I've lost the plot completely. But anyway, so I'll make sure that I publicise that in plenty of time and let you know about it. But hopefully in a couple of weeks we'll be doing that one. And then make sure as well you check out Diesel when he talks about TV shows that he likes. He sometimes comes on and just has a general chit chat about what he's been up to and talks about life in general and stuff. It's not just Diesel. His channel's called Diesel Arsenal, but he don't just talk about Arsenal. He talks about all sorts of things. So I love it. I just think it's brilliant. So make sure as well you come and subscribe to my channel, Warren's Team Talk. Every Saturday at 2:30, I do a show on my channel, which is sort of like a Sky Sports Soccer Saturday show where I keep you up to date with what's going on in the 3:00 kickoffs up and down the United Kingdom. I absolutely love that show. I really do. It's one of the favourite shows that I do. It's always a lot of banter and humour and light-hearted fun around the football scores and what's going on. So make sure you come and check that out. 2:30 every Saturday on my channel, unless like nuclear wars broke out or something. But yeah, come and check that out. Make sure you can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram and on Twitter as well. So yeah, and I did a show last night with Del Boy Gunner and Carl Walsh Gunner, and we were going through the January transfer window and what we think is going to happen for the rest of Arsenal season. So that's quite interesting. So make sure you come and check that out as well. So the mystery of the white Fiat Uno. So it's alleged that on the night of the tragedy, Henry Paul had lost control of the Mercedes, which Diana and the rest of her party were travelling in at 23 minutes past midnight as it entered the Point de la Alma underpass. It is claimed that the car struck a passing white Fiat Uno and as a consequence, the Mercedes swerved to the left of the two-lane carriageway and collided head-on with the 13th pillar that supported the roof. It's been estimated that the car was travelling at a speed of 105 kilometres, which is nearly twice the tunnel speed limit of 50 kilometres an hour. The car then spun round, hit the stone wall of the tunnel backwards, and finally came to a stop. The front of the car in particular suffered substantial damage, and some witnesses who arrived shortly after the crash had happened reported seeing smoke. Analysis of the wreckage of the Mercedes showed it had a glancing contact with the white Fiat Uno as it left traces of paint on the Mercedes bodywork. The French police made extensive efforts, allegedly, to find this mystical Fiat Uno, but their attempts were unsuccessful. It should also be remembered that no one actually came forward to report the fact that they saw the Fiat Uno in the tunnel, but some witnesses have claimed that they saw a Fiat Uno exiting the tunnel. Right, so, oops. So we've got a few more comments in the chat. Joanne says the seat belts were probably broke. The seat belts were probably broke. The whole car was bodged up. Yeah, I probably don't disagree with you about that, mate. Dre Vision says big up to you as well, my friend. I hope you're well. I hope you're enjoying the show. And he also says, great show, mate. Well, thank you, and I hope you're enjoying it. Yeah, I put quite a lot of work into this one, to be honest. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. And Joanne says, Warren, my lovelies, I enjoyed that. Good. Mohammed Al-Fayed, we're going to talk about him. The British Secret Service, MI6 in Paris at the time of Diana's death. Mohammed Al-Fayed claimed in the statement that he gave to Operation Paget as well, that as at other times, that the Fiat Uno involved in the crash was owned by a character named Jean-Paul James Anderson, who, according to Mohammed Al-Fayed, was a security service agent, and or that the car was used by MI6 as a way to cause the Mercedes his son Dodi Al-Fayed and Diana were travelling in to crash. It should be mentioned as well that on the 29th of January 2006, it was claimed by the Sunday Times that the British Secret Service were in Paris at the time of Diana's death, and as a consequence, they were cross-examined as part of the inquest. The Operation Paget inquiry found that the white Fiat Uno was owned by Anderson was in an unroadworthy condition, as it was 9 years old at the time with 325,000 kilometers on the clock, which meant it had driven 27,000 miles a year and it hadn't been maintained for several years. The French police were trying to locate this elusive Fiat Uno so that they could prosecute the driver for failing to give assistance, but they came to the conclusion that it was highly unlikely that the car was alleged to, that the white Fiat Uno that was alleged to have struck a glancing blow on the Mercedes was the one owned by Anderson, because of the fact that Anderson had so openly disposed of the car and because of the state that the car was allegedly in. The French police spent over a year after the crash trying to find the white Fiat Uno that had been involved in the crash, and in that time they had managed to eliminate over 4,000 white Fiat Unos from their inquiries, and it was felt that the prospect of facing a custodial sentence most likely deterred the driver from coming forward. Anderson was interviewed by the French police in February 1998, and he was able to provide them with documentary evidence that supported his claim that he was not the driver of the white Fiat Uno that was involved in the crash with the Mercedes that Diana and Dodi Al-Fayed were travelling the night that they were killed, and that he could only have been in his home the night of the crash, which was 177 miles from Paris. It's also been reported by a number of publications that the white Fiat Uno was owned by Levan Than, who was a taxi driver at the time the crash happened, and that is allegedly exactly the same one that was involved in the accident with the Mercedes that Diana was travelling in. Two of the witnesses also reported seeing an agitated man driving a white Fiat Uno, claimed that the man they saw driving the car was Than. Than has always refused to be interviewed, and it is claimed that his father said his son spray painted his white Fiat Uno red after the crash, and he had woke up his brother, who was a mechanic, in the middle of the night to help him to do this. It's interesting that the French police ruled Than out of being involved in the crash because he claimed he was at work on the night that the crash took place. However, it was later discovered that he had left work early that night of the accident, and he could have been at the scene of the crash. And another interesting fact is that multiple witnesses have come forward who remember seeing a man matching Than's description exit the tunnel seconds after the crash. So yeah, that's very interesting. The bright flash theory. So at the inquest, Richard Tomlinson made an allegation in the inquest that just before the Mercedes which Diana's party were travelling entered the underpass, there was a bright white flash which blinded the driver Henry Paul, and this caused the accident. And this allegation was backed up by 3 eyewitnesses at the scene of the crash. One of these was Francois Levistri, who made 3 statements to the authorities regarding seeing a bright white flash, but they seemed to contradict each other. The French detectives in Operation Paget rejected his evidence. It is claimed that the Mercedes was travelling behind him, and he claimed that he saw the flash in his rear view mirror, but his wife at the time, who was in the car with him, contradicted the evidence that he gave. It was also believed that Levistri was an unreliable witness because of a previous conviction in 1989 for dishonesty and a subsequent prison sentence. Now, Operation Paget officers thoroughly reviewed a number of eyewitness testimonies, and the report produced by Operation Paget concluded there had been no blinding flash for the following reasons. Several witnesses who could have been expected to see such a flash made little or no reference to it. The detailed crash reconstruction revealed the chain that led to Henry Paul crashing the Mercedes into the pillar in the underpass started well before the mouth of the underpass where it is alleged the flash took place. And the strobe light that it is claimed that was used to the strobe light that it is claimed was used would have been so powerful that the light it created would have been powerful to a very wide area, and it would have been powerful enough to not only blind Henry Paul, but also the driver of the white Fiat Uno, the chasing paparazzi, and witnesses standing on the roadside. It should also be remembered that when events with such historical impact as this happen, it also brings people forward who like to be associated with big and important historical events, such as the assassination of JFK, the Roswell incident, Adolf Hitler appearing in South America, which, by the way, I'm going to do a show about like what happened to Hitler at some point in the future, because that is absolutely fascinating. It's really weird stories about that. And also paid actors claiming that they were at Anfield in 1989 when Arsenal beat Liverpool 2-0, when clearly they weren't there. That's all I'm saying about that. So the next thing I want to talk about is the money in Henry Paul's bank account. Now, there's some more. Before we do that, Joanne says, this is a great show. Looking forward to more shows. It all affected us. Diana dying. The world stood still. The sky was blue, not a cloud in the sky. The birds had stopped singing. The roads were empty when me and Mum went to work. Yeah, I remember. I remember the night well. And my mum had been on night work at the hospital. She came home and told me, and I just couldn't believe it. Joanne says that day she died was like no other day. Yeah, you're right, Joanne, it was. That car got crushed the night of that accident. Wouldn't surprise me. Kevin Ball says to me, it was all set up, mate. It's looking that way, isn't it? It really is. It's just the madness that I've read when I've been doing this is just unbelievable. And I remember like all unfolding when it happened. It was just crazy. In Chapter 4 of the Operation Paget report, it states Henry Paul was the acting head of security at the Ritz Hotel in Paris. It is alleged that he worked for the security services of France and or the United Kingdom and was instrumental in carrying out the plan, inadvertently or otherwise, to have the Princess of Wales and Dodi Al Fayed killed in the Alma underpass. There is evidence that Henry Paul was in the pay of MI6. The French police did not investigate why Paul was in possession of about £2,000 in cash at the time of the crash, or why he had more than £100,000 in 13 separate bank accounts. It was also further queried why a person who was employed as the acting head of security at the Ritz Hotel in Paris would have that amount of money in the bank accounts owned by him. The inquiry also reported that a former member of MI6 had given sworn evidence that he was aware from MI6 files that MI6 had an informant who was a security officer at the Ritz Hotel and who was of French nationality. Yeah. So here we go. Security Service Connections, MI6 involvement. As we have already seen, it has been claimed that MI6 were in Paris on the night of Diana's death. A former MI6 officer claimed in a sworn statement to the French inquiry in May 1999 that Britain's MI6 had been involved in the crash and there was documentation to back up his claim. And he also claimed that one of Diana's bodyguards was a contact for British intelligence, and the MI6 had been monitoring Diana before her death, told Mohammed Al Fayed that Henry Paul was an MI6 agent, and the way that she had been killed mirrored plans that he saw in 1992 for the assassination of the then president of Serbia, Slobodan Milosevic, including the use of flashlights. However, the claims that he was referring to turned out to be for a different Serbian leader if he gained power. The individual who made these claims, then some 16 or 17 years later, when questioned about his claims on the 13th of February 2008, said that he may have misremembered and he withdrew some of his claims and or gave information which conflicted that which he had given 16 years earlier. The inquiry was given unprecedented access to the offices of both MI5 and MI6 to investigate the claims that this individual made, and it turned out that the plans that he was referring to did not include the use of flashlights. It should also be noted, though, that his character was dismissed from the intelligence service, and later served 5 months in prison for breaching the Official Secrets Act 1989. And in addition to this, anonymous manager employed by MI6 told the inquest that they were not keeping any files on Diana or Dodi Fayed, but this anonymous manager would not have admitted to the fact that they were. If they had been, would they? Come on, let's be honest about it. So now we move on. Was Diana pregnant with Dodi's child? So after Diana's death, there were many and varied theories circulating about how she had died, whether foul play had been involved, and if she had been murdered, what would have caused someone to want to have murdered her. One of the most popular theories was put forward by those who believed that she was murdered was that she was pregnant and that the father was Dodi Fayed. And it is claimed that the ruling classes in the UK did not want a Muslim man being the UK's head of state. In the days before her death, Diana was reported as saying that she had some massive news coming that was going to shock the world, and many took that to mean that she was pregnant. However, in January 2004, the former coroner of the Queen's household said in an interview with the Times he had attended a post-mortem examination of the princess's body at Fulham Mortuary, where he personally examined her womb, and found her not to be pregnant. It is also claimed that the individual who carried out the post-mortem examination that Diana's womb and ovaries showed no sign of pregnancy. Operation Paget, as part of its inquiry, tested blood that was found in the car that Diana had been travelling in at the time of the crash, and it is claimed that this blood was pre-transfusion blood and that the tests allegedly did not contain any trace of the hormone HCG, which indicates pregnancy. Operation Paget also interviewed Diana's friends, and it's claimed that she was in her normal menstrual cycle and she was using contraception. So that's interesting. So please, everyone, make sure you go and subscribe to Diesel's channel. This man, honestly, I can't praise him highly enough. He does brilliant videos. They're absolutely amazing. And the way this man can talk is just unbelievable. He comes on, he just sits there and it all pours out. And literally, he could talk for England. He really could. And like I said earlier, he'd win a gold medal. Absolutely no doubt about it. He's absolutely superb. And he talks about football. He talks about Arsenal. He talks about life in general. He has me coming on and doing this about the paranormal for him. So, yeah, he's absolutely, he talks about TV, all sorts of different things. So if you're not subscribed to him, honestly, you're missing out. You really are, because I look forward to his streams. Sometimes I can't always watch them live, but I do watch them on playback, and they're absolutely superb. I love them. Anyway, so make sure as well that you go and subscribe to my channel, Warren's Team Talk. I talk about football in general. I talk about Arsenal, and I talk about all sorts of different things relating to football. Every Saturday at 2:30, I do a show, which is closely, well, it's not really. I do a show that keeps you up to date with all the scores up and down the United Kingdom and the 3 o'clock kickoffs that are going ahead. So make sure you come and check me out, because that show is just a bit of light-hearted fun and banter with all the people that come in and watch. I really love the show. I do. It's one of my favorites. So make sure you come and check me out. It's always good fun. And you can find me as well on Instagram and also on Twitter. So that's me. And I try to upload a video at least once a week, maybe twice a week. So make sure you come and check me out. Right. So Diana's transport to hospital. Now, this is quite an interesting one. So the first call to the emergency services was made at 12:26 a.m. and then Diana arrived at the Pitti-Salpêtrière Hospital at 2:06 a.m. The French have a system which dictates that a patient needs to be stabilised first at a fully equipped medical ambulance before being directed to a specialist hospital that could treat the patient's injuries, no matter how far away it was. It is claimed that the first emergency officers on the scene of the accident were 2 police officers around 12:30 a.m. and the medical team arrived shortly after this. Diana was removed from the wreckage of the car at around 1 a.m. and she then went into cardiac arrest, and after receiving external cardiopulmonary resuscitation, her heart started beating again, at which point she was moved to the ambulance at 1:18 a.m. The ambulance then left the scene of the accident at 1:41 a.m. and they arrived at the Pitti-Salpêtrière Hospital at 2:06 a.m. And on the way to a hospital, it's alleged that they passed the Hotel Dieu hospital, and it is alleged that the reason that she was not taken to this hospital was because it was not equipped to deal with the injuries that Diana had sustained. And in addition to this, the doctor who was traveling with Diana in the ambulance knew that Bruno Rieu was on duty at the Pitti-Salpêtrière Hospital, and he was particularly skilled to treat her injuries. So that apparently that is the reason they never took her to the first hospital that they came across. So the embalming of the body. Hold on just a sec. So the embalming of the body. Mohammed Al Fayed claimed that Diana's body was deliberately embalmed shortly after she had died to ensure that any pregnancy test would have given a negative result. In response to this, to the allegation made by him, it was stated that the embalming fluids would have had no effect on determining whether or not she was pregnant, because there would have been physical evidence in her womb and her ovaries if she was pregnant. According to the Operation Paget report, the emergency room where Diana was treated was at the opposite side of the hospital to the mortuary, and it was some distance. So therefore, it was decided to keep Diana's body in a room next to the emergency room where she was treated, rather than to transport her to the mortuary. Apparently, dry ice and air conditioning units were placed in the room in an effort to try and keep her body cool. However, apparently it seems this was not very successful. I find this decision really, I have to say, extremely strange, as especially when you factor in the fact that the night that she died was an extremely hot day and night in Paris, apparently. And the efforts that were made to keep her body cool appear to have been unsuccessful. Prince Charles, as he was then, and Diana's two sisters were due to view Diana's body later that afternoon. And it is also believed that French President Jacques Chirac and his wife wanted to pay their respects, and this meant there was very little time to prepare the body to be viewed. And because of the state that the body was in, it was deemed unacceptable to let the family of Diana and the President of France view her body in the state that it was in. And so it's alleged that the hospital staff, faced with this dilemma, decided to embalm Diana's body with only the verbal permission of the local superintendent of police. Now, it is a requirement of French law that paperwork must be completed before a body can be embalmed, especially if it's likely to be subject to a post-mortem. It was reported that the necessary paperwork required for Diana's body to be embalmed was completed, but only after the embalming had taken place, and as a consequence, it led to allegations of suspicious circumstances. Some have suggested there was no way that the hospital were treating Diana could have known whether or not that she was pregnant, as a pregnancy test would have been irrelevant to the treatment that she had received. And some have suggested there was, I say that I find that notion to be extremely strange. I understand testing Diana to see if she was pregnant would not have been high on the list of priorities for the medical team who were fighting to save her life. I'm not a qualified medical professional with years of experience of working in the field behind me, but I'm pretty sure that during the course of the treatment they were given Diana, that if she was pregnant, then it would have become apparent. So now the next one. Now we're going to talk about the SAS. The SAS. There was an allegation that the SAS were behind the death of Princess Diana, and this was because of a former colleague of a SAS sniper had boasted that the SAS were behind it. A former colleague of a SAS sniper who was court-martialed had written a letter in which he had claimed that the SAS were behind the death of Diana. The information regarding this individual's allegations were passed on to Scotland Yard by the Royal Military Police at the end of November 2013. Scotland Yard ended its study of the SAS allegations, and then on the 16th of December, it emerged from Sky News reports there was no credible evidence that the SAS were involved in the death of the princess and others, and thus there was no reason to reopen the investigation. I have to say that I'm not surprised that the Scotland Yard claimed that there was no credible evidence that the SAS were involved in the deaths of the people who were killed in the car crash along with Diana. The reason I'm not surprised is because the SAS in general operate in the shadows, and I'm not sure that had it come out that the SAS had been responsible for the death of Diana, then the fallout would have been massive. I'm pretty sure of it. I'm sure that it would have been huge. So let's move on. So make sure you subscribe to Diesel, people. He's got an absolutely brilliant channel. Please press the like button. Please subscribe to him. Absolute top fella, and does brilliant content. And he talks about Arsenal. He talks about life in general. He has me coming on doing these shows about the paranormal and like stuff related to that, such as this. And I've got lots of shows in mind to talk to you about in the future as well. So we won't be stopping doing this anytime soon. And I love doing them. I really do, because it's one of my big passions. So yeah, make sure you come and subscribe to his channel. Make sure you come and subscribe as well to Warren's Team Talk. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram and also on Twitter. I talk about football in general. I talk about Arsenal, and I also I'm doing streams about the Six Nations at the moment. The next one I think is not this weekend, the weekend after, when I think it's Scotland against France. And then I think the weekend of St. Patrick's Day, Scotland are playing Ireland. I think it's at Murrayfield. So I'll be doing a live watch along with that. And I'm delighted to say that my old buddy Del Boy Gunner will be joining me for that as well. So yeah, come and check me out. Don't forget to miss the Saturday show at 2:30. It's an absolutely amazing show, and good bit of humour and banter and whatnot. It's always great fun. So make sure you come and check that out. Anyway, so don't forget to put a like on the video for Diesel, and don't forget to subscribe to his channel, and make sure you share his content around all over the place, because he's absolutely superb. Right, okay, so before we talk about that, I just want to give you my thoughts on this. And so, having looked into this subject, and remember, like, looking into it at the time and like revisiting it in the last few weeks, I'm in absolutely no doubt that we are not being told the full facts of the circumstances surrounding the death of Diana. And I firmly believe that she was murdered. By whom, I'm not sure, but I'm convinced that there are a number of parties who played a part in it, including the British royal family, the British Secret Services, SAS, and at least one global secret society, if not more. The reason for this is the glaring discrepancies in the findings of the official inquest, and the fact that findings of the inquest have been proven to be flawed, like, for example, the allegation that Henry Paul was a depressive drunk, the CCTV issue, the mysterious white Fiat Uno, the way it is alleged that Diana's body was embalmed, and the fact that the walls of the Arma underpass were thoroughly cleaned after the crash, in direct contradiction to French procedure, before anyone was allowed through the tunnel. So yeah. So Del Boy there's a few more chats in here. Joanna says it went past a few hospitals before taking her to the one she went to. They should have took her to the nearest one, as though they wanted her to die. Now, well, that's what it sounds like to me. Del Boy Gunner says it was all set up. Yeah, mate, 100%. I've got no doubt about it. And Joanna says, I bet the car is still in a container. Yeah, probably. It's probably in some big, highly guarded, secretive underground bloody bunker somewhere. And where are we? So there we go. That, my friends, is that. So tonight we've looked at Diana's birth and early life. We've looked at a brief history of the English monarchy, the British monarchy's link to secret societies and Freemasonry, the British monarchy being in crisis and the unveiling of Diana, Camilla Parker Bowles entering the scene and the interference of relatives. We looked at whether or not she'd been used as a tool, Diana and Charles getting married and the problems they had from the start, how the marital problems got worse as the marriage went on, Diana and Charles divorcing, the night of Diana's death, way they left the hotel, the crash, the official inquests and verdicts, and the alternative theories surrounding the death and what happened thereafter. So anyway, guys, I hope you really enjoyed the show. I absolutely loved doing it for you. I hope you have a great rest of your day wherever you are in the world. Thanks ever so much for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to Diesel's channel. Don't forget, please put a like on the video for him. And also, please don't forget to come and check me out as well, because, yeah, I've got my Saturday show coming up this weekend, and I'm going to let you all go off now and see what's going on with that Real Madrid-Liverpool game. It's probably just started the second half, I would have thought. And Gavin's just come in the chat, and he says, great show. Cheers, Warren. Thank you very much, buddy. I hope you enjoyed it. There will be another show in a couple of weeks. I'm not going to tell you what it's about just yet. I just want it to be, I like to have them as little surprises. Little surprises, like little presents under the Christmas tree, if you see what I mean. But yeah, so thanks for watching. I hope you had a great time. I hope you enjoyed it. Please, everyone, don't forget, remember to take care of your friends, your families, your loved ones, and also please try and share some love and kindness around the world. Have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you all again really soon. Take care, everyone. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.